standing freely next to you all.
Iranians joined this demonstration in reasonably large numbers.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. We start with some happy news. The former Columbia student Mahmoud Khalil, who was taken by ICE on account of his support for Palestinian rights, is out on bail, and we have video of him speaking to supporters on the steps of the St. John the Divine Cathedral in Manhattan, near Columbia, to some 1,000 of his supporters. The video is produced by Dave Lippman.
I'm grateful to be standing freely next to you all. I'm grateful to my wife, Noor, whose support, love, and care has kept me upright. I would like to salute the courage of all students at Columbia and across the nation. The Board of Trustees at Columbia, the shameful Board of Trustees, is currently attempting to expel 15 more students. These students are not afraid to stand for Palestine. Even today, Columbia University refused to allow this press conference and rally to be held at the gates, just so that we cannot remind them that they fund the killing in Gaza. Mahmoud Khalil is a Palestinian who refused to remain silent while watching a genocide in Palestine. A genocide that's, of course, committed by the genocidal state of Israel, that's funded by the U.S. government, that's invested by Columbia University. Columbia University will do everything and anything it can to ensure that the words "Free Palestine" are not uttered anywhere near it. What's happening behind ICE detention gates is horrendous. It's a stain on the U.S. Constitution. It's a stain on the U.S. consciousness. But it's actually taking toll on real people's life.
Palestinian people have been under occupation, ethnic cleansing, and all sorts of crimes since 1948. And we prevailed. We will prevail no matter what will happen.
It would be great to say that this is the end of the persecutions of Mahmoud Khalil, but of course it is not. He is only out on bail, and he's also facing a number of private lawsuits. I spoke to one of his attorneys, Amy Greer. Here are some of the selections. I'll be speaking with attorney Amy Greer, whose firm is based in New York City. She's one of the lawyers representing Mahmoud Khalil, a U.S. legal permanent resident who was abducted in March from his home in New York City by federal agents and taken 1,000 miles away to a jail in Louisiana. President Trump, no less, said that Khalil would be deported, the first of many supporters of Palestinian rights. Yet after 100 days, Khalil was released on bail yesterday, June 20th, and is being reunited with his family. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
First, I want to congratulate you and the other lawyers who've had success so far facing the might of Trump's Justice Department.
Thank you. Yeah, it's taken a team of over 50 people, but we got there.
All right, so let's look at that decision. As I understand it, the judge decided against the claim of the Secretary of State that he could just deem Khalil as harming U.S. foreign policy and then could be thrown out of the country. Is that right?
Yes, Judge Farbiage, over a couple of opinions as he worked his way up to his ruling. I believe it was last Friday. Time gets away from us, but I think it was a week ago now. So over the course of a couple of opinions, what Judge Farbiage has found is that Marco Rubio, his determination and the use of the way that he made this determination is vague under the Constitution. It's unconstitutionally vague. And part of these findings is, even obviously, I do not believe, and I have never seen that Mahmoud has engaged in anti-Semitism, but the Rubio determination made conclusory allegations that Mahmoud had, is anti-Semitic, and because of the United States investment in fighting anti-Semitism worldwide, that Mahmoud's presence in the United States was adverse to the foreign policy or to the, to the United States efforts to fight anti-Semitism. And what Judge Farbiage held is, in over numerous pages, looked really carefully at what foreign policy is, what it means, and the ways in which anti-Semitism do or do not play into a foreign policy position, and ultimately decided that the determination that Mahmoud, the conclusory and incorrect determination that Mahmoud is an anti-Semite, is not a foreign policy issue, and therefore Mahmoud's presence in the United States is not adverse or can't be adverse to American foreign policy. And I will just add that in a prior decision, I think it was 2 or 3 decisions ago now, in another long decision, Judge Farbiage also noted that Mahmoud had been engaged in protected political speech. And even if people are offended by that speech, even if they don't agree with that speech, it is speech protected under the United States Constitution. And so the combination of all of these findings, the vagaries of the application of the policy, the adverse foreign policy statute that Rubio used, and the fact that Mahmoud has been engaged in protected political speech, mixed in with a bunch of procedural jurisdictional things and all of these kinds of things, Judge Farbiage found that it is likely we would be successful in the federal habeas petition on that argument, and therefore he granted our preliminary injunction, in part, which included a request for release. However, he did not end up issuing release through the preliminary injunction. He instead entertained a separate bail motion, which is what was heard yesterday from 12 to 2 Eastern Time.
Now, as I understand it, there's many more legal cases going on with Khalil. That people are taking measures against him and he has to defend it in court and so on. Could you briefly tell us about those?
Sure. So I'll start on the defensive and then go into the offensive side. So there's been a pretty profound effort in the country, all around the country, and this is not new, to deploy lawfare. And what that is it's to find ways to use the civil system, the civil legal system, to bring tort claims, claims that people are inflicting emotional distress, claims that people are violating different statutes by their advocacy, trying to tie the advocacy to terrorism, trying to tie the advocacy to some sort of violence or even just speaking about Palestinian human rights causing people, intentional infliction of emotional distress and things like that. And this is called lawfare, because what happens is when people get sued, they have to fight. You can't just not show up. And so what's happening now is a lot of students who are advocating for Palestinian rights and dignity, including Mahmoud and many other students around the country, they are being sued for various and sundry things that, to be completely honest, I don't believe that they're stating any kind of a valid claim, but nonetheless, it takes my time, it takes Mahmoud's time, it takes everybody's effort. And so right now there are two cases against Mahmoud in New York, one in the Southern District on the federal side and one in the New York State Court, that basically make cast aspersions that do not amount to any kind of legal claim against Mahmoud. And then on the offensive side, I had been working at Columbia with students for quite some time before Mahmoud was abducted, which is how I know him. And Mahmoud and a number of other students have brought a lawsuit against Columbia, the Committee on Education and Workforce, and a number of the agencies that make up the Anti-Semitism Task Force. And we're making what's called a jawbone argument, which is basically the government, who is proscribed by the First Amendment from suppressing and chilling our speech and our expressive activities, is using Columbia to do it instead. They're indirectly suppressing the student movement and speech on Palestine through weaponizing Columbia by stripping their funding and otherwise coercing them to punish students. And as a result, students' First Amendment rights are being violated. And so that's another lawsuit that we have in the Southern District of New York.
Well, that gets me into my question about Columbia and its administration. He was a student at Columbia University. Did the administration stand by their student and help him defend his rights?
No. And this is the thing that has been just very distressing for any and all of us who are associated with Columbia in any way, whether it be, working with students there or, alums that I've spoken to, professors, students. Mahmoud had dreamed of going to Columbia and getting his master's degree there. This was a dream come true. And then once he got there, the genocide in Gaza began, and Mahmoud lifted his voice as a Palestinian, to end the genocide and to end Columbia's participation in the genocide through various financial and academic things. And the school has not done anything to support Mahmoud. They, in Rumeysa Ozturk's case, Tufts submitted a number of declarations in support of their student. But as far as I'm aware, I can only truly speak for Mahmoud, where Columbia has done nothing. But I believe it is also true that they have not supported other students either. And it's extremely disappointing given his role on campus as a trusted negotiator and mediator, somebody known to the campus to be a peaceful advocate, that the school has really abdicated its duty, I think, to protect its students, and in particular Mahmoud.
So Khalil is a victim of lawfare as well as government persecution. See the whole interview with Amy Greer on our YouTube channel. Trump dropped his beloved bunker buster bombs on Iran last Saturday. On Monday the 23rd, on the hottest day in Hartford, Connecticut this century, dozens gathered to protest.
80% of Americans oppose attacking Iran. 60%. People fucking hate this idea. They voted for Donald Trump because he was supposed to be the guy of no more endless wars in the Middle East. Liar! Liar! Liar!
Hands off the Middle East, no justice, no peace. Hands off the Middle East, no justice, no peace. Hands off the Middle East, no justice, no peace. Hands off the Middle East, no justice, no peace. Hands off the Middle East, no justice. peace. Hands off the Middle East, no justice.
Thank you all, guys.
Hands off the Middle East, no justice.
Hands up, Iran!
Hands off Iran! Hands off Iran! Hands off Iran!
Wars are not popular in this country. I myself am a Teamster, I'm a manufacturing worker, and I've been talking with my coworkers in the shop about the genocide in Gaza and about the buildup of the U.S. military apparatus before and continuing since then. And there is unanimous opposition, absolutely unanimous opposition in my shop and in my union with everyone I've talked to, rank and file workers, union leaders, and in different locals against this militarization, against this war profiteering, against the coups and occupations. So with that, I would say money for jobs and education.
Money for jobs and education.
Not for bombs and occupation.
Not for bombs and occupation.
This is the headline of the Israeli paper Haaretz on June 27th. IDF officers and soldiers told Haaretz they were ordered to fire at unarmed crowds near food distribution sites in Gaza. The toll of this method of crowd control is 549 Palestinians killed and over 4,000 Palestinians wounded. You recall Israel has banned the UN agencies that distributed food aid and replaced it with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, known to Palestinians as the Death Traps. The foundation was set up by Israelis and U.S. Christian evangelical Zionists and private security contractors, meaning mercenary soldiers. About the crowds that try to line up to get food, a soldier told Haaretz, "They're treated like a hostile force. No crowd control measures, no tear gas, just live fire with everything. Heavy machine guns, grenade launchers, mortars. Then, once the center opens, the shooting stops, and they know they can approach. Our form of communications is gunfire." It's good that some Israeli soldiers are talking truthfully about what they're doing. It would be better if they defied these illegal orders. You can read the article in full in our archive to the links about articles about Palestine. And on that Palestine page, a running clock keeping track of the days, hours, and seconds since June of 2023, when an Israeli sniper shot dead 3-year-old Mohammed Tamimi in a West Bank town. What you see flashing past you is a bit of a list by the Gaza Health Ministry of a 1,200-page list of Palestinians killed since October 7th, 2023, arranged from youngest to oldest. Nir Hassan wrote about the list on June 26 in Haaretz. Unlike previous lists, this compilation notes the precise age of children who are under the age of 1 year when they were killed. Hassan writes, Mahmoud al-Maranche and 7 more children died on the same day they were born. 4 more children were killed on the day after they entered the world. 5 others lived to the age of 2 days. Not until page 11, following 486 names, does the name appear of the first child who was more than 6 months old when he was killed. This last week there was 150 record highs in U.S. cities. Perhaps it's a sheer coincidence, but the New York Times printed this graphic today with the headline, "The world is warming up, and it's happening faster." Human-caused global warming has been increasing faster and faster since the 1970s. Alaska issued its first ever heat advisory. Predictions are parts of Alaska will see 85-degree highs this weekend. With the anti-science folks running Washington now, there's not any effort to keep global warming in check. Most of the billionaire class doesn't pretend any longer that the world isn't heating up, but they don't care. They figure they'll live in luxury no matter what happens to the rest of us. Now some of the remarks of Yassamine Mather on the program about the war against Iran that took place this week.
We also had both Netanyahu and Iran's monarchist saying that after the first night that the regime will fall. It's immediate. We've done one night of bombing and definitely there will be regime change. Now, for someone who has campaigned for changing the government of the Islamic Republic, I have always detested this type of regime change from above because very often they actually damage any attempt by ordinary Iranians, by the working class in Iran, to fight and overthrow this regime. On the contrary, I would say Israel has managed to strengthen the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic is a very astute dictatorship. It has large numbers of organizations that are used for repression, but it also has some supporters because they are religiously affiliated with the government or politically affiliated, but there are also those whose livelihood depends on the current regime. And in the absence of any major upheaval, they are not going to give up this government. And so had there been a collapse of the government, and I didn't think it would happen, and everyone I spoke, political activists I spoke to in Iran were saying, don't underestimate this regime. Had that happened, we would have faced civil wars, we would have faced chaos. We would not have seen a smooth regime change that was being, and is still being propagated by the Western media, by sections of the Western media. We are talking of a very incompetent son of an ex-Shah, of an ex-dictator, who spent most of his life living a life of pleasure in the U.S. He has no intention of actually returning to Iran, that whatever Netanyahu tells you. And I think the bubble that pro-Israeli media had created, both in the Persian-speaking world, but also globally, that there is this ready and waiting alternative government to the Islamic Republic that can come to power, was just has just burst. The bubble has burst. We now know there is nothing there. So we have every 5 to 6 weeks demonstrations in London against Israel and the events in Gaza. And this time it was planned as a demonstration about Gaza, but then it coincided with the bombing or Israeli bombing of Iran. US hadn't yet bombed Iran, but it did, as you know, later that day. So the demonstration usually gets a few 100,000, and this time there was about 350,000 people, so mainly UK citizens of various origins, but also British, UK born, and if you like, local people. Iranians joined this demonstration in reasonably large numbers. Now, I would say a small group were associated with the embassy, but there were a lot of Iranians living in UK who joined the demonstration who were opposed to the Islamic Republic. This included, for example, students who came from Oxford, from University College London, from King's College London. They had their own section, and in it they made clear they didn't support the Islamic Republic, but they also, for example, some of them were carrying banners because Netanyahu, if you remember, used Life, Woman, Freedom, the protests against hijab, in one of his first addresses to the Iranian people the second night after the bombing of Tehran. And they had this poster saying, don't use that slogan, you murderer. So that was the way they were trying to show, on the one hand, their solidarity with the movement that happened in 2023 in Iran, but also their opposition, 2022, but also their opposition to Israel. Other slogans about Iranian people taken hostage by Khamenei but being bombed by Netanyahu, and other various ways people expressed their opinion about the bombing. I think it was a successful demonstration in that it showed you could oppose the bombing without falling into the trap of supporting a theocracy.
That's our program for today. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.